Attention all cars. Calling all cars. Look for a black sedan with a 10-year-old boy riding the rear bumper.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Bad Movie Review. Today I watched Dick Tracy Detective, the 1945 Dick Tracy film based on Chester Gould's comic strip character of the same name, obviously. In this particular film, a mad slasher named Splitface is on the loose, and only the legendary Dick Tracy can stop him. Ooh. Now, of course, we have Dick Tracy and this new villain, Splitface. He's, as far as I can tell, not from the comic strip. And we also have Tracy's girlfriend, Tess Trueheart, and an appearance by Tracy's adopted son, Junior. Now, we do not see Tracy's signature yellow trench coat. He's just dressed like a normal, everyday guy in a suit with a fedora, which is pretty much everybody in 1945 as far as I could tell. The movie's plot is pretty straightforward. Since the movie's only about 61 minutes long, there's not a lot of time for extras and a lot of character development. You're supposed to kind of already be familiar with who the character is. And if you don't know who Dick Tracy is, you're probably not going to like this movie. It has some film noir elements, but it's aimed at, I would think, a younger audience. Hence the appearance by Junior in the strip and in the movie. As far as I could tell, this was probably part of a double bill where they would do two roughly 60-minute movies together, and you'd go see them as like a double feature, like a cartoon at the front. That's the impression I get. The technical aspects seem very paint by numbers, a lot of static shots, a few crane shots, but those were due to the limitations of the technology at the time. They were well done, though. Some of the film noir elements were pretty good, like the use of shadows and following people from behind, which was pretty rough back then. That was not an easy shot to do. And the makeup for Splitface was pretty good. The lack of the yellow trench coat kind of bugged me, though, because that's a signature of Dick Tracy. I'm not sure if the radio watch had been invented at this point in the comic strip. I think it had been, but that was noticeably absent. But this movie might predate that, so I'm not going to judge it on that one. Otherwise, it was an okay movie. It wasn't incredibly boring. It was a little slow in parts. Yeah, they were interviewing some suspects, and it kind of slowed down a little bit. But film noir really isn't my forte, and the car chase scenes were pretty good, actually. So I like seeing the old cars, so that worked for me. But yeah, it dragged for a few minutes in the middle there while they were trying to hammer things out. But otherwise, it was an okay movie, considering it was 1945 and it probably had a pretty low budget. It was a decent film. If you like old black and white movies, this one might be worth checking out. And of course, comic book fans might want to see it for the historical aspect. My main complaint with the movie is the casting of Morgan Conway as Dick Tracy. He's not a bad actor in itself. That's not the issue I had. It's the intonation of his voice reminded me a lot of Jack Webb, and I felt like I was watching a Dragnet episode. And honestly, that kind of took me out of it because it started to feel more like a Dragnet episode than Dick Tracy. Because while Dick Tracy has all these goofy villains, this guy was just some guy with a scar on his face, and all his villain names are kind of rude based on their physical features. So from just a standpoint of filmmaking, it didn't really say Dick Tracy to me. It was only Dick Tracy in name. There was nothing particular about it that made it comic booky or more like the comic strip. It just felt like some detective who happened to have the same name and happened to have a lot of the same people around him. And of course, it has the stereotypical girlfriend in trouble scenario, because you always have that in these movies. The girlfriend's overreactionary, jealous of every woman that comes near Tracy. And that was kind of a theme back then anyway in a lot of films and radio dramas. So that fits with it, but it looks really dated now. And I'm sure it'll get a lot of feminists really bent out of shape if they see that. Because you got the damsel in distress, stereotypical women fawning over Tracy, and that probably wouldn't sit well with today's audience. Sorry, dropping my notes. So overall, I would give this one a recommendation based solely on the fact that it's part of like comic strip lore, and it has some historical, foundations to it for what we have now with the superhero type films and some of the other movies based on comic strips. So from that aspect, it's probably worth sitting through for the 1 hour, barely over an hour that you would actually have to see it. But it was just kind of a tepid movie for me. It was kind of middle of the road. I didn't see anything wrong with it per se. I thought the casting of Tracy was a little off, but other than that, there wasn't anything to say, hey, run out and get this. This is a must-have for your collection. I wouldn't say that. Unless you want to complete a collection of all the superhero type movies, or because Tracy is kind of a superhero in a lot of respects, even though he's just a detective with a gun. He is kind of an early prototype superhero. So, from that aspect, it might be worth getting, but I really didn't see anything here that said I had to have it. I didn't feel like I completely wasted an hour, but I didn't feel like all jazzed and excited after seeing it. This one gets shown a lot on, Turner Classic Movies and stuff like that. It shows up here and there, and you can find it on DVD. I got mine in a 2-pack with another Tracy movie, which I'll be reviewing later. There were actually 4 of these movies. This was the first one to be made, followed by Dick Tracy versus Cue Ball, and then Dick Tracy's Dilemma, and then Dick Tracy versus Gruesome. And Gruesome had Boris Karloff in it. That's the other movie I'll be reviewing that was in the 2-pack that I got. Mine was in one of those Dollar Entertainment 2-packs, so you could probably find it for about $1. Or something similar. I'm pretty sure this one's fallen into public domain now, so it might even be online. And I'm sure you can see it on streaming, or find it on VHS or something if you're hanging out at Goodwill and you want to buy some retro nonsense. So it's out there, and it's probably cheap. So if you're looking for some old school entertainment, that would probably work for you. I know it's in a lot of multi-packs too. So, otherwise it was just kind of a middle-of-the-road movie. Not real threatening. A lot of people get stabbed, but you don't actually see most of it. You see people trying to get stabbed, mostly because the fight scenes, they didn't know any martial arts back then, I guess. Not a lot of Krav Maga classes. But, it was a decent movie, and I would recommend it for completionists. Otherwise, get it if it's cheap. It was an okay film. As far as film noir goes, there's better ones, there's worse ones. So it's middle of the road. I'm up in the air on whether or not to actually recommend it. I can't say it's awful. And I didn't mind it. It was okay. So I guess that's about it. I'm repeating myself now. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off here, and we'll catch you next time. If you like what you heard, check out other videos I've got, other broadcasts, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening.
Okay, Tess, I'm through with the report. Let's eat.
Eat? You didn't say that a moment too soon. I'm dying of starvation.
Come on, Junior, disentangle yourself from those guns. Hey, Dick,